Hello music lovers and welcome back to the Woodshed. If you look behind me, you'll see the lovely EVH 5153. That's a not so subtle hint. At today's episode, it's going to be very Van Halen-esque. You love Van Halen, I love Van Halen. And it comes with reason. This is not a random video that just fell out of my head. A couple of days ago, my good buddy Uncle Ben Eller released a nice video that was all of the classic Roth riffs played with a more modern Hagar-inspired tone. Okay, so you should go watch it. It's really good. It's something to the effect of best of both worlds, right? A very cheeky title to kind of tell you what's going on. Well, as we always do, we love to send previews and snippets and audio clips to each other as reference points. And side note, I encourage everyone to have a circle of people that they can send their previews to when you're making an album or a song or a riff or anything. Have you about half a dozen people that you can trust that's going to give you good, honest feedback. I have my little group of guitar nerds that I love to bounce stuff off of as well. And it's super beneficial to making sure that you don't have demo love with something that you're making. So with that said, Ben shot me a couple clips, audio snippets, and of course the playing was great as always. But he was sending me the tones, and I immediately was like, man, what amp is that? What guitar is that? It's really got the right EQ curve. He said it was the white EVH Wolfgang that he recently got, and the Soldano SLO 100. I think it was the SLO that was triggering my ears, like, ooh, that's the right kind of sizzle and things period correct kind of tone for the Hagar thing. So one thing that I did bring up to Ben, I was like, hey man, it sounds like your sound is in big stereo. This is the asterisk. This is why I'm making this video today. So Ben responds with, yeah, there's some workarounds. I'm not doing wet, dry, wet. So, what do I do? What can I do? And immediately I was like, well, it sounds like the pitch and the delay and this, that. We get down in the weeds and we just really start hashing out all of the details of what makes the effects from that era sound right. So then I was like, hey, I would loan you my SDE 3000, but it's married to my Van Halen board in a flight case. It's a pain to undo all of that stuff. And I was like, can you get one real quick? He's like, man, I actually have to make the video right now, yada, yada. What can I do? So I gave him some workarounds, but in the end, essentially Ben had to go with a big stereo image to make his video. Now, I am saying his stuff sounded great. It sounded really, really great. But our conversation raised the question, how do you get the correct wet, dry, wet image and not spend $20,000? So if you guys know, I made a live rig kind of addressing that. But I thought, man, we can do this cheaper. We can make this cheaper. And so where this video is headed is, how do you get the correct Van Hagar era wet, dry, wet tone for less than $1,200? And you can do it. It can be done. All right, roll the footage. So first of all, there's no sponsors in this video. Nobody paid me to make this video. This is all just my idea. And I think that's very important to note. Say, well, what's the key ingredient? And that's going to be this. No, this is a box, but this is the box for what you need. This is the box for the Roland Boss EVH SDE 3000 delay pedal. Now I've got it set up right here on my desk, right out of frame, and it's all wired in. We'll get to that in just a bit. That is part one that you need to purchase. That's going to be roughly $599, right? Part two is the Sir Reactive Load, also just out of frame right over there. So Sir Reactive Load IR. That too is a $599 unit, brand new. That's MSRP. Now is the point in the comments where everybody goes, well, if you add tax, blah, 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 it's not $1,200. Hey, check this out. You can go to Reverb and get a used one of either and chop that price even cheaper. So this is something that can be done really, really on the budget. All right, thanks to my family at Sir, we're going to make this whole process even cheaper for one of you lucky winners. Click the link down in the description to enter for a chance to win a Sir Reactive Load IR, and that will take your journey to wet, dry, wetland way cheaper. It's got to make it cheaper. You could do it more cheaper, more better. For those that don't know what I'm talking about, we need to establish what wet, dry, wet is and why Ben and I were having the conversation in the first place. Okay. So basically, when you have an image, and you know, when you're listening right now on left and right, here's my earbuds. You have left and right. You got two ears, left and right. So why does this third signal matter so much, and how is it different from just putting delay somewhere? It's not really the same thing, right? Okay, let's dig into that. Basically, Eddie Van Halen was one of the first big, I don't want to say pioneers, but he was the first big advocates for running his sound in wet, dry, wet. Also, once Eddie went wet, dry, wet, it was the only thing in his rig that never changed again throughout his whole career, even until 2015 when he did the final tour. Like, once it happened, it was the only thing that stayed the same. I personally think that's the most important part of Ed Van Halen's career arc and tonal journey, because it was the only thing that this man didn't change. And you've got to understand, this man changed everything often. From guitars, it was parts casters, to Kramer hockey stick headstocks, to Music Man, to PV, finally ending up with Fender and doing the EVH brand. Same way with amplifiers. You know, it was Marshalls, then Soldanos. John Surrey even made a CAE preamp for him that was used on some things. And then it was the journey over to Fender doing the EVH, which is this is one of the first gen EVH heads. So this guy changed everything. Even with the micro pitch, it was something that was there for a while, and then if I'm not mistaken, he didn't use it in the legacy tours in the 2010s, right? I don't think he had the Eventide on. The only thing that stayed the same was his delay image. Like, once he went there, he never came back, and that is why I think it's so important to show how the average home recording guitar guy can recreate this $20,000 sound that Ed used to have flight cases full of stuff to do. So with the SDE 3000, you're going to be able to use that in conjunction with a load box. We're going to assume that you own a guitar. We're going to assume that you own an amplifier. So I'm not going to use anything else in my signal chain on the front end of the interface. I'm also going to assume that if you're a guy that plays music at home, you have an interface that's got 4 channels on it, right? Because that's where you use your Axe effects or your amps and load boxes, or however you like to record and hear yourself in your computer rig. We're just going to assume that you own an interface, you own a computer, and we're going to assume that you own a guitar and you own an amplifier. Now, of course, if you don't, that's a whole different problem. But with these two pieces of gear, you come right out of the amplifier into the load box, and then out of the load box, you'll have, and that's via speaker cable. Like, you use the load box as if it was a cabinet. And then right out of the speaker cabinet emulator, which is the IR of the Sur reactive load, is the one I'm using. Then you can go out of the IR line into the input of the SDE 3000. Now, out of the outputs, you have 3 outputs, and those go middle, left, right. So we're going to get into that routing. I'm going to show you how it's done. And then more importantly, you pan the left and the right, respectively, all the way wide, and it gives you the center dry tone of the guitar. This is the most important aspect of the image that Ed built. It allowed those effects to be super hot in the mix. Like, when you hear the wet, dry, wet preset, and the presets I'm using in the SDE 3000 are Ed's presets. That's of note too. When somebody says that's not right or that's not the right delay, actually it is right. Matt and the team got Ed's rigs and pulled the presets out. If you notice in the SDE 3000, the EVH one, when you go to the EVH settings, you can't adjust the parameters. It's just kind of, it's like Ed's thing, and that's just where it is. So it is accurate to the way he did things. It allows the wet mix delays to be absolutely cranked. But when you hear it in the mix within the context of a song, the middle and the punch of the guitar is still there. So when I was playing along with Poundcake in the intro, my signal chain was the Music Man into the EVH into the reactive load into the Boss STE 3000, into my interface, and that is it. The backing track that I'm playing along with, and yes, I'm using the term backing track, I will link that in the comments section. It's just some random YouTube video that I found where a guy had muted the guitar, and it was just bass drums and Sammy Hagar doing Poundcake. So when I'm playing, it sounds like, it sounds like the record. Of course, I'm not Eddie Van Halen, but the image of how things sound period correct. And I think that's just due to that dry signal coming down the middle and how important that is. You're not just adding delay. You're putting it out on the wings and letting the middle of the image come through. So let's walk through the signal chain. Let me show you how to plug all of this stuff up instead of just use graphics or whatever. Let's switch to a camera phone and hit that. This is the deal right here, okay? This is the way we're gonna do this super cheap. There's two items that we're gonna need to do this super cheap, and this is one of them. If you look on the back, you're gonna notice that your outputs are right here. And so you have left, right, center. That is super, super important because that's how we're gonna split it using the SUR reactive load IR. Now the next item you're gonna need, and this is my personal one because it's got green tape on the top. John Cooper likes to put green tape on all my stuff. This is the SUR reactive load IR. This is about $600. Got my power supply here. And as you can see, what would normally take gigantic flight cases full of gear, we're gonna be able to do it with these two pieces of gear. And that's it. So that's really, really great. Again, this is the SUR reactive load IR. Basically, if you don't know what a reactive load is, this allows you to use any amplifier that you own, and I'm gonna assume that you own an amplifier. You have an amplifier. And you have a guitar if you're watching this video. So you're gonna take your tube amp, whether it be an EVH or a diesel or whatever you have, and you're gonna run it into the input from the amp right here. You don't need to use the speaker. This needs to be on 8 ohms if you're coming from your amp. So just set your amp to 8 ohms and run it into the back of this. That is step 1. Step 2 is to take an instrument cable and come from the IR out on the SUR reactive load. See how they're labeled? This is gonna be an instrument cable. This one's gonna be speaker cable. This is gonna be instrument cable, and you're gonna go out of the instrument cable of the SUR reactive load, and then you're gonna go into the input, mono input of the Boss STE 3000. Now from the output side, we're gonna think of this in 2 ways. For a live application, you're gonna take the outputs into 3 different DIs, and that'll send it to front of house or your monitor rig or however you're doing it. And then from there, they can pan the left and right and then send the middle dry. So you'll have wet, dry, wet to front of house, which is awesome. If you're gonna be at home, you need to have an interface, and most of you probably do. You have to have an interface that's got at least 3 inputs, but they don't make a 3 input interface. So let's, for argument's sake, you need at least a 4 input interface, right? So like an Apollo that's got the 4, or Focusrite, or whoever, like whatever you like to use, make sure you've got 4 inputs. What we're gonna do from this is we're gonna take instrument cable, and I'm gonna go, the dry will go into input 1, the left will be input 2, and the right will be input number 3. Now, I'm not saying they have to be those numbers on your interface. A little common sense here. That can be 5, 6, 7. That can be 7, 8, 9. It can be whatever they need to be. I just think of it where dry is first, left is the second one, and right is the third one. So that is our signal routing here. And so next up, let's get an amplifier. And I think it's only appropriate that we get an EVH 5153. All right, let's talk about the signal chain. So we will run from a guitar, which will be right here. This is a guitar. This guitar is going to go into the input of the EVH 5153. Now, we're going to follow that line. Now, instead of going to a speaker cabinet, this speaker cable is going up to the reactive load IR, to the input of that reactive load where it says from amp. Okay, now the back of the reactive load IR is going into the input of the EVH, STE 3000. Yeah, too much EVH stuff. Okay, now where are we going to plug this in right here? It's going to go, this is really important, it's going to go right here where it says IR. So you have two options. One says unfiltered and one says IR. We're going to be using the one that says IR on it. So let's just plug that in. So now, from the amp, speaker cable, okay, from the amp, the speaker cable, and it's going to say 2 amp on the back of the reactive load IR. Now, from the reactive load IR that says IR, we're going to follow that line into this handy dandy Boss STE 3000. Now, forgive me, I've got an FM9 here. I'm making presets for my Patreon and for my website, so I just don't want to unhook everything. But this is what's happening. Now, these 3 outputs on the back, this green one, I used a green cable so you can see its instrument, and it is the direct, what they're calling direct out. That's your dry line. This non-braided cable is my effects left. So make sure you're reading that white block that says effect left. This is my effect left. The braided cable, effect right. Okay, I've got those going into my Apollo, and then on the back side, obviously. And then in the Apollo, I'm going to be panning the left, hard left, and the right, hard right. And this green is going to go straight down the middle. Okay, so that is your complete hardware setup. It's actually really dadgum easy. Okay, that's really, really easy for some wet, dry, wet. Okay, so now you see how it's all done. This is really spectacular in that you can do it so cheap. Thanks to Sweetwater for sending me an STE 3000 loaner to use, because mine is on my board. And then, of course, thanks to my friends at Ernie Ball, Music Man, Sterling, and Brian, and all the squad out there. You guys are the best, and when it comes to building that style of instrument, you got to go to the source, baby. And, of course, thanks to my family at Sir for the reactive load IR. It's something I tour with. I use it all the time. It's super easy. It fits in a backpack. It fits in your luggage. So one of the things that I like to do, this is just a little bonus, when I'm playing live, whether it be with Gary LaVox from Rascal Flatts, or if I'm doing my own solo stuff touring, or even with Ben and I in Skank Banger, we like to use hybrid rigs, or I like to use hybrid rigs, and I talked Ben into doing it for Skank Banger. A hybrid rig means you're using tube heads, just traditional tube heads, big speaker cabinets, and that's your stage volume. And then in between, to send the signal to front of house, you're using something like a Sir reactive load IR or a universal audio aux or anything like that. That allows you to have perfectly consistent tone in your in-ears. Front of house is super happy because there's no microphone moving around, and you just have a very consistent type of setup from night to night. It just makes everything really very much the same. So if you're interested in any of these pieces of gear, there's a billion places to check it out, but I encourage you to go visit my friends at Sweetwater, because they were kind enough to help out in the making of this video. And of course, if you're trying to save some bucks and you want to get something on the cheap, jump over to Reverb. There's no sponsor in this video. This is all just my opinion. Nobody paid me to make this video, and I think all that's really important to know as well. With that said, if you want to catch me out on the road doing live shows with my band, or maybe with Gary LaVox, or Skank Banger, or even clinics with Sir, go to AndyWoodenMusic.com, get that schedule. That's where I'll be playing. You can also download Axe Effects patches, Line 6 HX Stomp patches, backing tracks tabs, all of that good stuff is for sale, as well as sweet swag. Talking sweatshirts, hoodies, t-shirts, goodies like that. Go there and get yourself something nice. So if you want to learn this solo to Poundcake, I'm going to put on a note-by-note, step-by-step tutorial over on patreon.com for my Patreon members. I really kind of got in the weeds with the solo to make sure I had it as close as I could possibly play it. Again, nobody will ever be King Edward, but it's fairly close. I think it's close enough to teach. So if you want to jump in and get that, that's patreon.com/AndyWoodMusic. And also you can join up for our live masterclasses we do every week. Hang out with the Woodshed members. It's a great family, and we will see you next time.